Attention, you're listening to The Todd Huff Show, America's home for conservative, not bitter talk and education. Be advised, the content of this program has been documented to prevent and even cure liberalism, and listening may cause you to lean to the right. And now, coming to you from the Full Suite Wealth Studios, here's your conservative but not bitter host, Todd Huff.
Yes, my friends. Welcome to today's program. We're going to talk about this government shutdown, which is now in day number 29. 29 of the Schumer shutdown. Incredible, really, what they've subjected the American people to. So we'll talk about that. We'll also spend a little bit of time in the second and third segments talking about some legal things that are happening in this country that pertain to election integrity. You might have seen that Harmeet Dillon has, she's kind of turned up the heat on states that are not giving the federal government access to their voter rolls to ensure that we have voter rolls that are as clean as possible heading in to the midterm elections, my friends. So we'll talk about that. All of that, of course, right here from the Full Suite Wealth Studios. And it's my pleasure to be here with you today, my friends. All right. So have you ever wished that you had a whole team to help you manage your financial life? We all can probably relate to that. That's the beauty of family office services at Full Suite Wealth. Their experienced advisors bring together everything from high-level investment management, private equity, private credit, options, strategies, to complex legal needs, all customized for you. It's like having a family office just for you with people who know your story, your goals, your vision, and if you're serious about planning for the long haul, my friends, this might be something worth looking into. Check them out. Visit fullsuitewealth.com. Jason and the team over there will take great care of you. Again, fullsuitewealth.com. Build your legacy, secure your future, my friends. Let's start here today by talking about day number 29 of the Schumer shutdown. Folks, make no mistake about it. We are looking at a Democrat shutdown, specifically so that you know that I'm fair. Of course, if you listen for any length of time, you know that I'm fair. I mean, it's my opinion a lot of times, but I'm consistent here. I'm not blaming House Democrats. Of course, they tried to stop it too. They tried to stop the continuing resolution, but they can't. They don't have the same tools in the House of Representatives in the minority that the Senate does. The issue, as I've laid out repeatedly, clearly, is the issue of the filibuster and how it is being weaponized by Chuck Schumer and the radical left in the Senate. I don't want to go through that. We've gone through that in previous episodes, which you can check out on the website or wherever you listen to podcasts or whatever. But this is a Democrat-led shutdown, specifically Democrats in the Senate. And this was the 13th time, the 13th vote that the 13th time Democrats have voted to shut the government down. In fact, I'm looking right now at an article from The Blaze, theblaze.com, Rebecca Zelko, and she has every time, she's got it listed here, headline here, here's every time Senate Democrats voted to keep the government shut down. This was written yesterday. I don't know if she has yesterday's vote in here. Yeah, she does. So there should be 13. Friday, September 19th. They voted against it 44-48. Tuesday, September 30th, 55-45. Wednesday, October 1st, 55-45. That's the vote numbers. Friday, October 3rd, 54-44. Monday, October 6th, 52-42. Wednesday, October 8th, 54-45. They got to get to 60 votes. So look, there's a majority. So when these knuckleheads and professional deceivers tell you that Republicans are in control of the Senate and they can't get something passed, just look at this. Now, Rand Paul has been voting against the government, against this continuing resolution. So he's not one of the folks that are voting for this. I believe every other Republican has typically voted for this. I would have to double check specifically. But Rand Paul's position is he's not voting for any legislation that doesn't actually fix our fiscal problems. And this is a continuation of what we were spending in fiscal year 2025. And so Rand Paul's a no on this. I understand that. I do. I think he's wrong on this, but I understand it. He's ultimately right on this. The Democrats are opposing this because they want the American people to suffer, though. And this is, listen, inexcusable. They want political victories. They want to be able to blame Trump and the Republicans. They want to make these claims that they can't keep a government open. They don't know how to run a country. Therefore, moving into the midterms, you have to vote for us because otherwise, who knows what's next for the American people. Now, I will tell you, there have been plenty of good things for the American people in this administration. In fact, I'm reminded of what I did today's Todd Talk on, which is there will be very close to, there's a goal now of 600,000 physical deportations in in calendar year 2025 by the end of the year, December 31st. Right now, there's 527,000 reported physical deportations. That does not include the number of people who self-deported, which they estimate to be 1.6 million. So when the dust settles here, somewhere between 2.2 and maybe getting close to 2.5 million people who were here illegally at the beginning of Trump's second term are no longer going to be in this country at the end of Trump's first year in his second term. This is remarkable progress. This is what the American people voted for. This issue is about illegal immigration, not about legal immigration. And we are cleaning up this country. We're working to be a nation of law and order again, despite what the left is doing. We're wanting to be a nation of law and order again as it pertains to voter rolls as well, which we'll get to in the next segment. But I could go through this, and there are 13 separate votes where Democrats in the Senate have voted against opening the government at funding levels that were exactly the same to what was happening on September 30th. They're trying to make this about anything other than the facts. Those are the facts. Democrats own this in the Senate. And what's sick about this is that I'm telling you, I know that there are people out there that don't want to accept this. Listen, I remember as a young man in my 20s, I was on the horse farm. I remember this. I remember listening to Rush Limbaugh, who is instrumental in my life, instrumental in helping me do what I do today. He was the best to ever do this by far. It's not even close. Everyone else is playing for second place, and it's a very, very, very distant second place. But Rush was absolutely incredible at this. And I remember as a young 20-something-year-old kid finding my way, figuring out what it was that I should be doing here on this planet. And I was getting introduced to talk radio, and I thought that's what I want to do, and that's what I was doing in a way in college, specifically at American University, when I had to argue in favor of truth and reason and common sense in the face of a lot of liberals and leftists who were in that classroom with me at American University in Washington, D.C. I loved every minute of it. I didn't know you could make a career out of it back in those days. And so the dream was formed back in the late 90s, and I was learning. I was learning in the early 2000s. It was me and a bunch of horses and a bunch of property. A bunch of property I had to maintain, paint fence. I had to take care to mow the property. This was back before zero-turn radius tractors. At least we didn't have those. I had to trim. I had to weed eat the fence line, and there was miles of fence. Anyway, so that's what I was doing. It was me, and sometimes I had help. Sometimes it was just me. And so I started listening to talk radio. And I remember when Rush was talking about how there were people in Congress specifically people on the left, who did not have America's interest at heart. And I'm going to tell you right now, as sincerely as I know how to tell you, I did not want to believe that. I didn't. I couldn't wrap my head around it. I couldn't understand that. I loved my country. I loved this country for as far back as I can go. I don't know what my parents did specifically to make us be patriotic, but we loved this country. We were grateful for this country. I remember learning about America, and the teachers didn't apologize. They didn't talk about how terrible people. Obviously, none of the founders were perfect and all that sort of stuff. And maybe at times they, people glorified them or made them out to be bigger than they were. But what they did is nothing short of amazing. What they founded here in this nation, we should all be just incredibly grateful for. It's a wonderful, wonderful nation that was formed at the hand of the founding fathers. And of course, ultimately, by the hand and grace of God Almighty. But I appreciated that from the beginning. And it was hard for me to understand that there are people out there that don't like this country as founded. I couldn't relate to that. I didn't understand what it was that they didn't like about this country. But there's people out there that do not like liberty. There are people out there that do not like you having the opportunity to live your life. They think that they're better equipped to tell you what to do than to let you live your life as a free person created in the image of Almighty God with certain unalienable rights. And it was hard for me to come to grips with that. Now, I'm not saying everybody who disagrees with me hates America as founded, but I am telling you, there are people, absolutely, some of them holding seats in the U.S. Congress, in the U.S. Senate, who are America bashers, America haters. They do not like this country. They do not believe in the principles set forth in this country. One of them is running for mayor in New York City. And it is incredible to witness this with that, from that viewpoint, with that in mind, because to think that there are people who hate some of the founding core principles of this country, it's really mind-boggling to me. So it's hard. I know it's hard. I know that there is a personal desire to say, surely not. And sometimes people ascribe, some certain decisions or votes that people make on the left as hating America. And that's not always the case, but my, oh my, it's certainly the case in some instances. And I'm telling you, these folks in the U.S. Senate, they have it within their power 100% to stop the pain of average Americans, to stop it, and they won't do it. They won't do it. They won't accept responsibility. They want Americans to hurt. They want Americans to hurt because they will never, as Rahm Emanuel said, never let a crisis go to waste. They see it as a political opportunity, and they are prepared. They have no heart. These people talk about having these tremendously large hearts, and they want you to know how much they care. Hogwash. Absolute, just ridiculous thing for them to say. That is not at all what it is. They want power. They are prepared to use your suffering, if you're out there facing the potential of suffering from this shutdown, which most people don't, but some people will face a loss of income, a loss of other benefits. We see SNAP benefits rolling out. Notice that the congressional members of Congress are getting checks, and Bernie even defended that. Bernie Sanders, the nutty professor himself, is apparently okay with keeping the government shut down and preventing people from getting some of these other benefits, while he and his colleagues need the checks. He said, some of them can't do without the checks. He's got a couple of houses. This is a socialist that lives like a capitalist and loves every minute of it, just doesn't want the average person to, benefit from the blessings of free market capitalism and the opportunities that come from that. But this is a self-created problem by the left. Now, I want to play here. This is good stuff. C-SPAN has a caller who called in. What was her name? See if I have her name here in the notes. I don't see it here, but she was She's from Philadelphia, according to what she says in this call I'm about to play for you. She was a member of a union, maybe even a leader within a union in, I guess, Philadelphia. And she gets on here, she calls into C-SPAN, which I know you're sitting there breathlessly watching every day of your life. But she calls into C-SPAN and she blames the government. She says, listen, I'm a Democrat, she says. But this is the Democrats' shutdown. They're the ones who voted against this now 13 times. They're the ones who have created this. They don't need to do this. They need to vote to end this shutdown because it's about to cause real havoc on a lot more people. And I want to play this. It's a minute and a half, minute 45 seconds or so, but I'm just going to let her talk here in a moment, my friends, because I think it's important to let them, well, for the people, again, who are insisting this is a republic. This is not even perspective. This is just as a matter of fact. This is a Democrat shutdown. Democrat shutdown. And they've shut it down because they don't care about people. They shut it down because they think they've got a political winner. They don't care the consequences. They are this politically desperate when Trump deports their future voters. They are this politically desperate when Trump is trying to clean up their voter rolls in the state. They are this politically desperate when Trump is trying to redistrict in states like Indiana, like they've done in Texas, like they're trying to do in North Carolina, done in Missouri, and all that sort of stuff. They are desperate. They have no leader, the Democrats. They have no ideas. All they can bank on is to try to cause the base to be an absolute, just a chaotic state of mind where they're afraid of their own shadows, going out and joining these No Kings protests. That's all they've got. Fear, anxiety, depression, rage, stir up the folks in Antifa. This is all they've got, my friends. They have nothing, and they're terrified. They are absolutely terrified. So I'll play this here in just a moment. Before, my friends, I do that, let me remind you that we have launched here at the Todd Huff Show. We have launched a division, relaunched, I guess you could say, where we help folks put their logo on almost anything. It's called Red, White, and Brand, and it helps you get what you need, whether that's T-shirts, apparel, whether that's trade show graphics, whether that's promotional products, pop-up banners, you name it. Anything with your logo, your message, we can help you produce. And it helps fund the mission and reach of this program. RedWhiteandBrand.com, that's the website, RedWhiteandBrand.com. Promo code Todd will save you 10% off your first purchase. Check it out, RedWhiteandBrand.com. Your logo on almost anything. All right, that being said, C-SPAN here opens up their lines. They take calls from people across the country talking here about the government shutdown. This was a couple of days ago. This was on day 27, which would have been Monday. They have a countdown. 26 days, 7 hours, 18 minutes. That's how long the government had been shut down. And so what do? They take callers, and there's this Democrat caller who sets it straight, and she explains that this is a Democrat shutdown. I'm just going to let this go because she explains this very well. She's quite articulate, very clear-headed in the way she presents this, and she's spot on, correct. Here she is explaining why this is a Schumer shutdown, in fact, and not a Republican shutdown.
Worker. And I hear people talking about, the president needs to get involved, and the Democrats are saying this, the Republicans are saying this. This is the truth. The Democrats, and I'm a Democrat, are the ones that actually, in the Senate side, shut down the government.
That's right.
They did not vote for a continuing resolution except for 3 of them. One is the Senator of Pennsylvania, Fetterman.
That's right.
And all. So they have to get together and stop holding an American hostage. We're about to have people without food come, November 1st, which is the end of this week. And that's ridiculous. It is not worth it. Plus, the health care companies have already said you're way past the deadline for them to change their costs that they're going to give out to the public for the health care. So, because November 1st is open season. So
let me pause that. So the Democrats' narrative here is that the Republicans are not going to, the continuing resolution doesn't address the subsidies for Obamacare. And so that's what they're fighting for, is for the health care of people. And she says, look, this is just a bunch of bunk. They're out here telling us lies. I mean, she's saying this about her own party, by the way. She's saying, listen, they're lying to us. The healthcare companies have already said, look, November 1st is the open enrollment date. They've already got this stuff, the plan set, the prices are set and all of that. There's nothing that can be done about this, she says. I don't know if that's 100% true or not. I do know that what the Democrats are saying about the whole Affordable Care Act or Obamacare subsidies are not rooted in reality. That's not even the issue here. The issue is keeping funding at current levels as it was on September 30th. All these other things could have been addressed. In the past nearly 30 days now, 29 days, we could have been engaging in negotiations about these other things, but they refused. They decided to shut the government down in spite of all of that. And now there's about to be, hurt for American people, for the American people, for the folks who are on some of these programs and so forth. And they want to use this, that they know this. They want this to happen, and they want to point the finger at Donald J. Trump, at Republicans, and they want they're banking on the fact that they think the American people are fools, and they don't see that they voted against reopening the government 13 separate times. But here this caller continues.
Oh, they need to get together. I know they keep on saying the president needs to come back, but the power of the purse is with the Congress, not the president. You all talk about this president being the king, but if you want him to solve this problem, you're making him a king.
That's a great line.
This has got to stop in America. I want the Democrats to fight, but I want them to fight in a negotiating way like I did when I was a union president, versus sitting up here constantly bickering and the Republicans bickering. This has got to stop, and America has got to stop accepting it. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
It's Lynn in Philly.
Lynn in Philly. Yeah, she's a spot. Tell me that's not right. By the way, I love the line where she said, Democrats are talking about Trump being a king. If he comes in and solves this problem, they're making him a king. This is a congressional problem, specifically a problem within the Senate. Democrats have been giving us the runaround. This is on them to fix. Friends, I've got to take a timeout. Quick timeout. It's good to see sanity returning to Democrats across this country. Quick timeout, though, my friends. You're listening here to Conservative, Not Bitter Talk. I'm your host, the one, the only, the ever so beloved Todd Huff. Back here in just a minute. Welcome back, my friends. So the Democrats are starting to realize that they have real problems amongst their leadership when it comes to solving this government shutdown. Democrats, the rank and file anyway. Now, granted, this is a union Democrat. This is not a radical leftist. This is someone who clearly sounds like she has sense. I don't know why she's still in the Democrat Party today, given their leadership, but this is not some insane... She wasn't out there at the No Kings protests. I mean, I don't know that. I don't think so. She's not part of Antifa. Clearly not part of Antifa. She's just an average, regular, middle-of-the-road American, slightly to the left, votes for Democrats probably because of her union affiliation. She believes Republicans are after their jobs and all that sort of stuff and their wages, and so she thinks Democrats are protecting them from the, from the management, from corporations and so forth. That's kind of the environment I grew up in. So I don't think that this she's got sense, and she's got sense enough to know that the Democrats in the Senate are playing their voters, banking on them being basically low information voters, banking on them not knowing what's really going on, banking on them blaming Republicans instead of blaming Democrats. But many Democrats are awakening to this. This is not a Republican shutdown at all. Now, I will tell you that some of these folks are still out there doubling and tripling down on the narrative that it is a Republican shutdown. In fact, Jake Tapper, and this is to credit Jake Tapper. I am no fan of Jake Tapper. I am on the record as saying to you, I think Jake Tapper is basically, I think he's a fraud. I think Jake Tapper's a fraud. I try to, this is never personal for me, but I try to tell you what I think is the truth. Jake Tapper is, if he wants to know the problem in this country when it comes to getting the truth out and that sort of thing, I think he should look in the mirror. That's what I think. Jake Tapper, to me, the most clear example of why Jake Tapper is a fraud is how he, in my opinion, this is my opinion, I think he knew how bad Biden was in 2020, probably long before that. I mean, in 2024, probably all the way back to 2020. I knew. How did I know? I've never met Biden. I've never had Biden on this program. I didn't run around with people that were in Biden's inner circle. I didn't talk to Karine Jean-Pierre on a daily basis, or a semi-regular basis anyway. And, if I did, I would have asked her. What's going on? Your boss is clearly not well. Did Jake not ever do that? No, he didn't. Well, I don't know what he did behind the closed doors, but I do know this. He didn't mention any of this until after the election. Then he and another so-called journalist, make-believe journalist in my opinion, wrote a book that they tried to sell to the American people. I told you not to buy the stupid book. I hope you didn't. I told you I would tell you everything I knew about the book that they were reporting if you were interested in people exposing what was really happening with Joe Biden after the fact, after it didn't matter, after there were no political consequences. Then Jake Tapper and this, I can't ever remember the other guy's name, but it doesn't matter. They're all the same. Like that's the thing. They're all the same. They're professional deceivers, in my opinion, and these folks are leading the American people astray. They love controlling the information. Once it's not going to hurt their political cause and their political movement, their political party, then they'll write books about it. But where was Jake Tapper? Whenever it mattered, when it actually mattered regarding who people were going to vote for? He didn't mention it then. He didn't mention it at all. That reminds me, I don't care anymore. Years ago, I invited, there was, I think it was when either Kavanaugh or Gorsuch was being appointed to the Supreme Court, I believe. Trump had nominated this individual. I'm pretty sure it was one of those two. I think it might have been Gorsuch. It may have been It doesn't matter. I believe it was a Supreme Court fight. I invited Senator Todd Young, who's in the state of Indiana. I wanted him to come on here and talk about his position on whether, he was going to support the nominee or whatever. His people, now it was his team, not him. His people said, you know what, Todd would love to come on the program but he doesn't want to come on now. He wants to come on later. And I said, I don't care about, with all due respect, I don't care about later. I don't care about what he thinks when the stakes aren't high. This is not, by the way, in a campaign here in Indiana, Todd Young, a Republican, we're going to hear about his being a Marine, and I appreciate his service, but that's not how Marines lead, my friend. That's not how leaders lead. You don't hide from the conflict whenever it matters and then come out after the fact once you see where all the chips fell and say, well, this is what I think should have happened. That's just, look, I'm done with that. We need real leadership in the U.S. Senate, and that's just one example. We need real people who are prepared to fight for the things when they actually matter. And it's sickening to me, candidly, if I'm being honest with you. It's not real leadership. It's one of the reasons I stopped doing a whole lot. We're doing more interviews. I think a part of this is I have to hold my nose and deal with this sort of stuff from time to time. Not always. I've had great guests on. This is not meant to pull everybody into that, but there are certainly people who behave like that. They want to figure out where the right side of the issue is after the fact and then just kind of blend in and not make a difference. We are so far past that. We are in a survival for this country. Democrats are holding hostage this great nation. By the way, where are those senators? I don't hear them out there railing about what's happening in the Senate. Maybe they are, and I'm just not seeing it. Sometimes I don't follow it like that, but I certainly haven't seen them out there. Here's Jake Tapper on with Representative Melanie Stansbury. She's a Democrat representative from the state of New Mexico. Now, I credit Tapper here for pushing back a little bit on her and asking her, well, why the Democrats are allowing this shutdown to happen. I just want you to listen to the side. Sorry, I muted myself. The pure sophistry and nonsense that exists in this conversation. It's like she lives on another planet where logic and reason do not reside. Just listen to this conversation between Jake Tapper and Democrat Representative Melanie Stansbury regarding the Schumer shutdown in Washington, D.C.
Should the Democratic senators from New Mexico, your home state, vote to open the government so that these SNAP funds are not at risk?
Let me be clear.
Oh, boy.
The administration is choosing to starve American children with money that they already have appropriated.
I'm not applauding
their
tactics.
By the White House.
Well,
this is a choice
Stick
by
to
the
the
White
talking
House.
And this
They
is
are
also,
choosing
Congresswoman,
to
this
cut
is
off
also a
food
choice
assistance.
by Senate Democrats
No,
to
it
not
is
vote to
not.
open the government. Yes, it is.
Yes.
I understand
Senate.
why
Jake's
they're
right.
doing it. They're doing it because they want Medicaid funds restored. They're doing it because they want Obamacare premiums to be extended past the end of the year. I understand the reasoning.
Sir, let me just be clear.
Be
The
clear.
money for
Let me be
contingency plans is sitting there. That is why the states are suing. The White House is withholding funds from
2 to 3
children
weeks worth
to
of SNAP
have
funds.
food.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it may not be a big deal to you, but let me
It is
tell
a big
you
deal
that
to
for
me.
the grandparents, for grandparents
big deal
that
to me.
literally are feeding their children,
My point
to
is that
not
it's a
have
short-term
money
solution.
in those accounts.
It's
It
a
doesn't
short-term-
matter. At the end of the
is
day,
pure
people
sophistry.
need to be able to feed their families.
Then
and
open the
Saturday
government.
is when those funds
If you
run
feel
out,
so
and
strongly,
we are fighting to
Congresswoman,
get
why
that
not
funding.
ask the Senate Democrats from New Mexico to
That's
vote
right.
to open
Tapper's
the
right.
government so
Never
that
thought
the
I'd say
SNAP
that.
funds...
Sir, I am here in the House of Representatives. It is shut down. I am fighting to get the
This is
government
pure
reopened. I am
sophistry.
fighting to get funding put back into SNAP that is already existent, and I am fighting for the American people.
You're
I
fighting
am
for
here
nothing.
to show me a single Republican that is here. Not a single one is here
This is
to make
pure
sure that
sophistry.
Americans are fed on Saturday. That is why I am here.
It's a disingenuous, you know what, I don't want to say it. I kind of do, but I won't. Disingenuous. It's shut down because the Democrats shut it down. Pure and simple. We don't need contingency funds. All you have to do is open up the government exactly as it was the second it's shut down, but they don't want to do that. They want the talking point. They want the pain. I'm telling you, they want the pain because pain causes people to make changes. And they are happy to cause pain for the American people. It's sick and sad, my friends. I got to get to the end of this segment, though. But I know, friends, you might be curious about Kratom, or you just want honest answers before you try anything. And that's why you're invited to the weekly Tea Talk from Christopher's Organic Botanicals. It happens every Thursday night, 7 p.m. Eastern. No pressure, no sales pitch, just real conversation with real people who want to help you understand Kratom, what it is, how it's used, how to stay safe, what to avoid. Christopher's Organic Botanicals believes education should come first. That's what sets them apart. If you've got questions about relief, dosage, safety, sourcing, anything along those lines, this is the forum, the place to ask. It's a Zoom call. It's totally free to join. They built a community that's focused on truth, not hype. Join this conversation Thursday night. That's tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern. For more information, go to Christopher'sOrganicBotanicals.com. That's Christopher'sOrganicBotanicals.com. Truth, tradition, transparency. Got to run here. Quick time out, my friends. Back in just a minute. Welcome back, my friends. Third and final segment of today's program. Let's face it, there are a lot of companies out there that don't share your Christian values. The good news, you do not have to invest in them, my friends. At 48 Financial, they specialize in biblically responsible investing. They'll help screen out companies that go against your faith and values so that you can tailor a plan that's specific to your goals and your priorities. And 48 Financial will handle all the heavy lifting for you so that you can focus on what really matters. If you want to see how your current investments align with your values or how they don't align with your values, whatever that might look like, go to 48financial.com/Todd. That's 48financial.com/Todd. 48 Financial, because our values matter and so does our money. I told you off the top, I want to stop talking about the shutdown here for a moment. I told you off the top, in addition to the shutdown, I was going to spend a little bit of time talking about voter rolls, the federal government's attempt to clean or make states clean their voter rolls and all of that as they fight to secure election integrity. What's interesting is here, I guess you would say what's unfortunate, is that we have people who are fighting for election integrity. This is something all of us should agree with. All of us should be in agreement that we want fair and accurate election results. Now, we want the process of voting to be as easy as possible while maintaining its security. This seems very, very commonsensical to me. And we've learned a lot of things that, just from following elections, looking at how other countries do their elections. There have been cases, laws that were people that have gone to jail for breaking the law as it pertains to elections. There's a lot of things that could happen, and the simpler the better. And having every time you have the polls open, there is a possibility for fraud. That doesn't mean that it's rampant. It just means that there's a possibility. Just like if you're a store owner, every time you have, every time you open the doors, someone can shoplift. People can shoplift and break in and enter when you're not open. But you can secure it differently, obviously, when you're closed than when you're open. You can pull the little bars over the front windows. You can turn off the lights. You can, turn on motion detector, whatever you do. But every time that you're open to take votes, you're also open to the possibility of fraud. And the reasonable people say, let's just make that. We understand that the risk can never be zero, but we don't want it to be widespread, and we want to take safe, precautionary steps to prevent it from happening. And listen, I've shared on this program how I helped. I think I should have. Maybe I was writing something, but I had a person on my team. She voted for the first time. She voted for Joseph Biden back in 2020. And she had requested a absentee ballot here in Indiana. And she said, I just have questions. I've never done this before. So I sat down and I answered her questions as objectively as I could. She voted. She didn't tell me. She ended up telling me later. I never asked. But I made sure she could cast her ballot no matter who she was going to vote for. And that's the way that it should be. I wanted her vote to count. I would hope that she wanted my vote to count, even though she disagreed with it. And that's what we have to have in this country. Whatever the vote is, that needs to be accurate and correct. And part of the problem here, is that some of these states have voter rolls that are absolutely a mess. Absolutely a mess. The DOJ's, Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division, has told states that they need to submit and clean voter registration lists or face lawsuits. 6 states have already been, I believe, sued. California, Michigan, Minnesota, New Hampshire, New York, Pennsylvania. The Department of Justice has cited several laws, including the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act of 1960. And they requested information. What they're trying to do is say, do you have reasonable measures here? Are these lists clean? Are people registered in multiple places within your state? Are they listed multiple times here in your state, period? And can they vote multiple times? Are these people living? Those sorts of things. Now, the states are saying that the federal government is, that they can't be trusted with this data, which is crazy to me, because then why are you collecting it? Why are states collecting the data if the federal government can't have it? Listen, I'm all for states' rights, but there are times when the federal government has a prerogative to know these things. And this information, these lists of names are basically the legal pathway into casting a ballot in an election. And the federal government has a prerogative to make sure that these federal elections are cleaned up to the best of their ability. This is just common sense. And the more inappropriate, the more poorly kept, I should say, these voter rolls are, the more it presents opportunities for fraud. If people's names, I've shared with you before, I had a gentleman who's in California. He said he went to vote. He didn't have to show an ID. He just had to say his name. He said he glanced down at the paper and his name was on there 4 times in some variation. Can you not see how that's a problem? He could have gone back theoretically 4 times. Folks, I gotta go. Gotta wrap it up. SDG.